Hey folks, welcome back to another review with yours truly, Sam Healey. Today we're taking a look at Warhammer Underworlds Dreadfane, the newest core set coming out in the Warhammer Underworlds universe from Games Workshop. And so we're going to take a look at this. Now, I have done already kind of a more in-depth review where I show how rounds work out and how different cards are played out and all of that kind of stuff with the Shadespire box. So you can go back and watch that video if you'd like. This one is basically going to focus on some of the differences, the new additions to the system that this core box is going to bring with it. So you'll take that as a caveat. But without further ado, let's get down to the table and take a look. And so here's everything that you're going to get in a box of Warhammer Underworlds Dreadfane. Of course, you're going to get your two factions. You have Iron Soul's Condemners and Lady Harrow's Mournflight over here. So you've got 3 models and 4 models respectively. You're also going to get, of course, their action card deck and all of that kind of stuff. Character cards, pieces. The one thing that you're probably going to see is a little bit out of place is that first of all, there's only one board. There's not 2 boards in this one, and we'll talk about that more later. But there's also some new cards that are called hazard cards that introduce a new phase into the game. So we'll talk about that more in a little bit as well. You get your Learn to Play book, which is kind of a quick start manual, and then you also have your regular rule book, which has all the other minutia that goes along with it. So what I figured we would do here is look at some of the new things, give a closer look at both of the different factions, really take a look at the hazard deck because those are the newest things about this. Most of the game has not changed in that you're still playing 3 rounds. Whoever has the most glory or points at the end of those 3 rounds is the winner. But the things that have changed is, of course, the new factions and that new deck. So we'll take a closer look at each of those 3 different elements. So the first thing we're going to take a look at that's a little bit of a difference is the fact that there's only one board in this one. There's not 2 that can be joined in different configurations. There are some very similar elements as far as starting spaces and impassable terrain and the different objective spaces that can be held. But generally speaking, there's a difference there. Now, you might be asking, well, what about deployment zones? Well, you have one thing right down the middle here, and this is one person's deployment zone, this is the other person's deployment zone. So there is that. Additionally, there are 2 sides to the board. So again, this middle row here is the dividing factor. You have one setup zone here and the other here, but there is that. It does come with 2 boards, but it's one that's double-sided. Now, of course, here you have Lady Harrow's Mournflight, and these are apparitions or ghosts. So they actually are non-corporeal, which means that they can move through block spaces on the board. They can actually move through other characters on the board as well. Matter of fact, that's how they're going to turn themselves over to the inspired side, is by the fighter moved through a hex occupied by an enemy fighter in this activation. So that's one way that they can turn themselves over to be inspired. Generally speaking, they have the only real difference here is hit points on this side and then the different kinds of attacks that they're doing. On the other side, there's a lot more differentiation. Some more special abilities come up on each of these different things. And then, of course, they're going to be moving a little bit further. And they also have 2 dice for defense, which is actually a pretty cool thing as well. So there's that too. The models, of course, are what you would expect. I did notice that there's a little bit more notice of seam lines on some of these different models, if you can see along the top of the head there. And then I did kind of a hack job on some of them, so part of it's my fault, but some of it is these didn't go together as well as I would have probably liked them to. But really, that's kind of a nitpick because they still look very, very cool, and it's nothing that a little bit of green stuff can't fix. Now, their decks are going to be a little bit different, and as I was going through them, I noticed that there are a lot more reactions and actions cards than I've noticed in previous decks or factions. Now, I haven't played all of the factions, so give me a little bit of leeway there, but the action cards have a lot of reaction ploy cards and action ploy cards. And then there are other kinds of upgrades that are a lot more free to be put wherever they like. The objective cards, and again, I haven't played all of the factions that are out there, but a lot of the objective cards have this thing called duel on them. And duel is where you have an if and objective that's going on here. So if this is true and this is true, then you can score these 2 points there. So it's a dual objective kind of. You have to make sure that 2 things are in effect if that's the case. And then there are also a lot of surge abilities here, which is basically a score this immediately if this has happened or just happened or something to that effect. But then there are also cards that are surge duels where you can score it immediately. You don't have to wait till the end round if this and this is true. So the both decks are like that. So I probably won't mention that so much when we talk about the Condemners, but there's a lot of action and reaction in this action deck, and then there's also a lot of dual objectives and surge objectives in their objective deck. With Iron Soul's Condemners here, in order to inspire, you are all about rolling critical successes on either attacking or defending. That will get you flipped over to the inspired side, and as you can see here, they're rolling only 1 die for defense on their non-inspired side. They all have 4 hit points, which is really strong, and they do move 3, which is kind of normal for the Stormcast Eternals, and their attacks are pretty nasty. I mean, you're rolling 3 dice here, where I'm used to seeing just 2, like with Brodus here, or Brodus, however you want to pronounce his name, but doing 3 points of damage. Wow, that's a lot of damage for your non-inspired side. But once you're inspired, you can see that you're rolling 2 dice for defense on all of these, and Brodus here, or Brodus, actually gets a little bit quicker with that extra point of movement. The damage also comes up a little bit. You're rolling 3 dice and 3 damage here. 2 dice, that stays the same, but it also adds this one, 2 dice and 2 damage. So then you also have some special abilities that are going on over here, the Storm Smite Mace as well. So as you can see, there's a lot of cool stuff going on. It's not just your average, I guess you could say, run-of-the-mill Eternals warband that's going on here, but as with the Mournflight, you have a lot of reactions and actions in here, along with some pretty cool upgrades, and then you also have a lot of those surge and dual, and then surge dual objectives in your objective deck as well. Now, I think one of the newest additions to the system is this idea of hazard cards, and it has to do with the surroundings of the Dreadfane, where it's a more volatile environment, so there's more dangers lurking around, and that's what the hazard deck personifies. So before each of the activation phases of each round, you're going to draw 1 to 3 hazard cards, and the effects are carried out, and then the activation round begins. In the first round, you'll draw just 1 of these cards. In the second round, you'll draw 2, and finally in the third round, you'll draw 3. Some of them have lasting effects. Some of them only fire off once, and then you discard them, and it's all done. But just to give you some ideas, first of all, you have Whirling Saw Blades, where the players will roll off, just like if you would be in an initiative situation, where each player takes 4 dice and rolls them, and whoever has the most criticals is the winner, and the other person is the loser. Well, in this case, the winner picks 1 fighter on the battlefield and rolls an attack dice. On a roll of a hammer or a critical, the fighter that they chose is dealt 1 damage, and then you get rid of this card. Other examples here are something like Spear Traps. Again, there's a roll-off, and then starting with the loser, the player makes a defense roll for each of their fighters that's standing on an edge hex. If there are no successes in the roll, that fighter is dealt 1 damage, and then you discard this card once both players have rolled for their fighters. Again, let's go ahead and skip down a little bit. This one says Cataphrane defense systems. So the players roll off. The winner then picks an empty occupied hex. Then 3 more hexes that are all adjacent to each other. And any enemy fighters that are in there, in those hexes, are going to face an attack roll. And if that roll is a hammer, then the fighter is dealt the damage. Then you get rid of this card. Then you also have something like this one right here, where it's unremitting violence. All attack actions have innate hammer or cross swords until this card is discarded. And then you discard this card at the start of the next hazard phase. So for an entire round, you're going to have, everybody's going to have innate automatic successes for attacking. So that's a pretty cool thing as well. Skipping down some more, we have this one right here where it says a Gur Amber Shard. All right, so the players roll off again. The winner places the Gur Amber Shard token in an empty hex. That hex is blocked. Range 1 and Range 2 attack actions made by fighters adjacent to the Gur Amber Stone token have +1 damage. The effect on the hazard card lasts until the end of the game. So this one sticks around for quite some time, and it is going to basically put into play this token right here. And so again, this is just a new addition to the game that kind of throws everything not completely off kilter, but it adds a little bit of spice to every single round. Generally speaking, I think that this is a positive direction. I did, however, notice the absence of magic in these 2 factions. And I don't know if that is a step away from what they tried to do with the last core box set that they came out with, but I did notice that. I actually looked for it and I didn't find it. So I don't know if they're going to continue doing that or if that's something they're kind of done with, but there's that. Now, first of all, my pros for this is that, first of all, I like the fact that it comes with a single board. That is double-sided, so it does have some variability there, but I like the fact that it comes with a single board and there isn't the cumbersome double board and adding that other kind of fiddly part of the game where you're setting up and you're choosing which board's going to be placed down first and then where the other board's going to be attached. That's all done away with. I like that. I think that's a positive thing. I didn't mind it, don't get me wrong, but I like the fact that it just kind of shaves some time off of the setup time for the game, which is a good thing. My second pro for the game is the fact that these 2 factions, I like them. I like how they kind of stay true to their roots, I guess you could call it, where you definitely have the astral, non-corporeal ghosts on one side, and then you have the stalwart knights on the other. And I like all of that, but I like how the knights are not so cumbersome at this point. They're not so slow anymore. I mean, yeah, they're still moving 3, but one of those guys, if he gets inspired, he's moving 4. That's really cool. On top of that, they're doing a lot of damage. Now, that's not anything different from the Eternals of yesteryear, so to speak, but there's just something cool about this Eternals faction, the Condemners. I like the fact that they're using hammers and maces and blunt objects and that type of thing, not swords or axes or anything. I like that a lot. So, I also like the reactive and the active abilities that are coming in the power card deck. I also think that the duels and the surges for the objectives, that makes you pay attention a little bit more because you have to really kind of take into account what's going on in the game. So that's really cool. I like that. When a game makes you pay attention to it more, there's less downtime, you're more involved in what's going on. So that's a definite pro in my opinion. I like that about both of these factions. Now, as we're talking about factions, the Mournflight, don't let the fact that they're ghosts or apparitions make you think for any singular moment that they are lightweight or anything like that, or that they're not powerful. These guys pack a punch, or ladies rather, I apologize. These ladies pack a serious punch, and they're not as fragile as other ghostly factions have been in the past. So don't discount them right off and say, I don't want to play them because they're weak. No. They tore up the Eternals, the last game that I watched them play. So don't discount them thinking that they're fragile. They're a really cool faction. I don't know what it is, but I found as I was going through this that there seems to be more charts explaining how things go, more diagrams and illustrations that are very explanatory. There's still a lot of text, and you can read that text, and it just makes for a little bit more of a understanding than anything else. And then I really like on the back here where they have a chart that basically goes through the entire combat sequence so that you can get it down to a T. And then they even have charts down here that tell you, that walk you through all of the different results from those different combat roles. And I really like that. They list bullet points, all of the different activation options, because it's really easy to kind of forget that you can draw a power card, or you can discard an objective card and draw a new one for an activation. It's really easy to forget that kind of stuff, but they lay it all out here on this quick reference thing on the back of the rule book. So I don't know what it is. Maybe I just haven't looked at the the Warhammer Underworlds rule books in a while, and as I was looking through this one to see what the differences were and all that kind of stuff, I was just struck with how well it was laid out and how many different pictorial explanations were used, and I like that. I think it's good. Another pro for me is I like the new hazard phase that's entered into with this expansion. Now, I am going to talk a little bit about this in a con section as a con as well, but for the most part, this is a pro because I do like what it does for the game. It adds a little bit of spice in there. It takes into account your surroundings a little bit more often than some of the other sets have done. So I do like the hazard phase. I think it's a good addition rather to the game, and the fact that there are so many of those hazard cards means that you're gonna run into some of the same ones occasionally, but for the most part there's going to be a lot of differentiation there, and I like that too. Now moving on to my cons, the only con I have for this particular core set is the added roll-offs that the hazard phase will induce into the game. And the reason I say that is because you could have a lot of rolls where nobody's rolled, everybody's just tying with those critical hits, and that can add more time to a game that really shines because it's so quick and it plays so fast. That hazard phase could kind of slog things down a little bit if bad rolls, quote unquote, are made in that phase. So not all of the hazard cards institute a roll-off. That's not it. So that's why this is a minor con for me, and it's really kind of a nitpick more than anything else. I really enjoy what the hazard phase has done, but there are those times where it's going to add some time and maybe some unwarranted time, unnecessary time to the game that really shines because it plays so quickly. So that's my only con for this core set. So that's about that for Warhammer Underworlds Dreadfane. I'm going to give this one a strong 9 out of 10. It has not changed my feeling of the game at all. It has allowed me to keep that strong enjoyment of the game that I originally pushed me to make Shadespire a 9 out of 10. So my enjoyment has not waned at all, and this is just good stuff added to a great system. So that's it. 9 out of 10 for me for Warhammer Underworlds Dreadfane. Thanks for joining me. I certainly appreciate it. We'll see you guys and gals on the flip side. Take care.
Thanks so much for watching another Dice Tower video. If you enjoy our videos, subscribe to the channel for more fun, comprehensive board game coverage. Also, consider joining us at one of our events. Come to Dice Tower Retreat, a small, intimate gathering where gaming is king. Join us for Dice Tower Cruise, the largest board game cruise. Attend Dice Tower West in Las Vegas for gaming fun on the West Coast, or Dice Tower East in Orlando in sunny Florida. Dice Tower Conventions, the friendliest gaming conventions on Earth. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.